Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're studying Chapter 8 in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Chapter 8 is titled Transforming the Three Poisons, Craving, Anger, and Ignorance. This is where you're going to be able to broaden your understanding of what's going on in the unenlightened mind and also deepen your understanding. So far, what we've been discussing in this group learning program is primarily craving, desire, attachment, explaining how this is the cause of all discontent feelings. And through eliminating these, you can liberate the mind from things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these discontent feelings can be eliminated through eliminating craving, desire, attachment. But there's two other aspects of the unenlightened mind that need to be understood at this particular point as we dive deeper going over the next several weeks as we enter into additional chapters. I'm going to be explaining to you what's referred to as the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires. Because so far in the Four Noble Truths, you've understood this kind of window into the unenlightened mind, where we talk about the problem being discontentedness, the cause of that being craving, desire, attachment. The elimination of it is eliminating craving, desire, attachment. And the path forward is to practice the Eightfold Path. But now we're going to go a level deeper and help you to understand the three poisons, craving, anger, and ignorance. And through eradicating these, you'll be able to understand why the mind is experiencing these discontent feelings, because having eliminated these from the mind, you'll no longer experience discontentedness. So part of eliminating these from the mind is to understand what they are, understand the symptoms, and understand the remedies. And that's what I'm going to be doing today, is sharing with you what these three poisons or these three unwholesome roots are, the symptoms that you experience because of them, because this will help you to independently verify that what I'm sharing is the truth. Then I'm going to provide you the tools and the techniques helping you to understand how various things that you've already learned on the Eightfold Path is working towards eliminating these. Of course, we're going to start with meditation first. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. Welcome to our class. We start with breathing mindfulness meditation to help you train your mind and learn how to do meditation. And also, it'll help you in the class itself because your mind can be more attentive and more alert, and it'll help you to retain the teachings for a longer period of time. So I'm going to start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then I'll provide some guidance. Then there'll be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just meditating together, and then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. Remember, these chants, they're not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. They're not a prayer or anything like this. There's nothing mystical or magical with these. It just helps to ease the mind into meditation by getting awareness of the mind and awareness of the breath. I just taught a 4-part series on the chanting, so if you're interested in learning how to do this, you're welcome to watch that through the replay. And if you already know how to do these chants, you're welcome to join along. So I'm going to start with the chanting, and then I'll be back with some guidance for breathing mindfulness meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Otang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami สุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะโพตังมะคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรภูริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I'd like to once again welcome all of you guys to our class today. As I mentioned, today's topic is transforming the three poisons, craving, anger, and ignorance. This is chapter 9 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is where we're going to start diving in and broadening your understanding of what's plaguing the unenlightened mind and keeping it in the unenlightened state, and providing you solutions of how to remedy those and eliminate them. I've actually already been talking about the solutions and teaching them to you all throughout the group learning program. But today's class is where you're going to see how everything I've been teaching you is coming together and helping you to move the mind closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. So if you've been learning and practicing in the Sunday classes and the Wednesday classes or the recordings, if you've been reading the books, you're going to start seeing now how all of this is going to come together and explain to you what it is that's going on in the unenlightened mind, so that now through understanding the symptoms, you can then implement the solutions, remedy this, and then the mind can experience more and more of the qualities of enlightenment. Remember, as I teach, whenever I'm teaching or whenever you're learning from anyone else, it's important not to believe what it is that I'm sharing. As I teach you the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or these three fires, you'll be able to independently verify that what I'm sharing with you is the truth. Because what I'm going to be describing to you is the symptoms that you experience as a result of having these three poisons. And I wouldn't be able to know your life. I wouldn't be able to know what you're experiencing in your day-to-day life because I don't know you to that level of detail yet. So when you hear me describing some of the examples and some of the symptoms, you're going to see these similarities to what it is that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life. And this is how you can independently verify what I'm sharing with you is the truth. And then if you learn the solutions and you're implementing those solutions, this is where you'll see the improvement to the condition of the mind. So as we go today in our class, I'm going to pause at a few different times and open up for any questions that you guys might have. You're welcome to ask any and all questions by putting it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like through unmuting your mic, and then we'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream. So again, welcome to all of you guys, and thank you for deciding today's a day that you'd like to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. So first, let's talk about the three poisons from a high level. We refer to them as the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires. These can also be described as pollutions or taints or defilements. These are a high-level description of what's plaguing the unenlightened mind. It explains why the mind is experiencing the unenlightened state and how decisions made through these are producing unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. This word karma is oftentimes used as karma. If you've heard this is the Sanskrit language. In the original language of the teachings of the Buddha, we use the Pali word, which is karma. If this translated to just one English word, I would use that word because it'd be much easier for you to understand. But since it doesn't translate to just one English word, I need to still use this word karma. We're going to be talking about this in detail next week, where you're going to be learning about this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions. And when you're making decisions through the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots, it's producing unwholesome results or unwholesome karma. So by understanding what these are and eradicating them, you can eliminate the unwholesome results that you experience in life. Oftentimes when things are happening that we prefer not to happen in our life, in the unenlightened state, we will typically blame others. We might say that it's good luck or bad luck, or it's destiny or fate. But in reality, everything that you're experiencing is a result of certain decisions that you're making. And when you're just experiencing certain unwholesome results, this is because the decisions that you're making are through these unwholesome roots. So when you understand what these are and you uproot them and eradicate them out of the mind, slowly but surely making wiser and wiser decisions through the three wholesome roots, then you can experience peace and joy, because what you'll notice is the condition of the mind is drastically improved. And you'll notice that less and less harmful things are coming back to you because you're causing less and less harm. So the three poisons provide this clear description of the problem in the unenlightened mind and how applying the antidotes, it'll solve the problem and move the mind to the enlightened mental state. So while the Four Noble Truths has this window that you look into the unenlightened mind and really penetrate it in four simple statements, it's the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots that take you a level deeper and then also broaden your understanding of what's going on in the unenlightened mind. But it's the 10 fetters that is the deepest level of detail that the Buddha shared, where he's explaining exactly what the problems are in the mind and exactly how to remedy them. So there's this layered effect, because you can't just penetrate down into the detail right from the beginning. You need to go through these different layers to be able to understand what's happening in the mind. So the 10 fetters are the individual detailed aspects of the mind that these pollutions are hindering the mind from experiencing the enlightened mental state. And we refer to them as fetters because during ancient times, they would attach a fetter around your leg and keep you trapped and confined in a certain area if you were a prisoner. Nowadays, we put prisoners in jail cells, but during ancient times, it was just open land and open space, so they would attach a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, which is referred to as a fetter, and this would keep you confined or trapped to a certain area. So it's the 10 fetters that's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. But speaking about these from a high level, it's referred to as the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires. So you can think of these as fetters, but in reality, it's the 10 fetters that explains the problems in detail. But it is these three unwholesome roots that's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. But in more detail, we refer to them as the 10 fetters. There's antidotes or remedies or solutions or things that extinguish these fires that the mind is experiencing. We refer to those as the three wholesome roots. So you're working to uproot these unwholesome roots out of the mind and bring in the three wholesome roots. And this is what's going to lead to the wholesome results or the wholesome karma. So now I'm going to explain what these are at a high level, and then we're going to go into each one in detail so that you can understand what they are and then the solutions. But first, let me just give you an overview of what they are before we go into and talk about them in detail. Craving or greed, This is what we've been talking about so far, and I've been describing it as craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectations, the longing, the yearning, the selfish desires that the mind has. This is where the mind is grasping for contentedness and satisfaction outside of yourself, where the mind is thinking that some external thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets these pleasant feelings of happiness, excitement, elation. And then if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. All of these are very painful for the mind to experience. And this is coming from the mind's pollution of craving or greed, or we refer to it as desire, attachment. This is the longing, yearning, thinking something outside of yourself is going to provide lasting satisfaction. And as I mentioned, if you get what you want, you get those conditional pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind isn't getting what it wants, it'll move to these painful feelings. And one of the things that arises in the mind is this anger or this hatred or this ill will. There's lesser versions of this too, like frustration, agitation, irritation, annoyance, even dislike, that the mind dislikes other beings because these painful feelings are coming up of anger and hatred and ill will because of the craving. The craving, desire, attachment is causing the anger to arise. And this is where the mind can be bitter and hostile and harsh, aggressive towards others. The mind, through its intentions, its speech, and its actions, it's uncomfortable with the painful feelings and it becomes unskillful. And you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards others. And you might push people away. You might be bitter, harsh, and hostile with them, or you might put your expectations on them, trying to control them to do things your way. And where all this is coming from is the ignorance, or what I refer to as the unknowing of true reality. This ignorance, this word is what we're using to translate from the words of the Buddha, but this is oftentimes thought of as a derogatory word nowadays, but this is what people usually translate it as. But you could also think of it as confusion or misunderstanding or the unknowing of true reality, because an enlightened being doesn't refer to others in a negative and derogatory and demeaning way. So the Buddha wouldn't have used the word ignorance, but I still use it as a way to help students to connect if they happen to have studied other teachings. Other teachers might be using this word ignorance. The unknowing of true reality is a better way to explain it. It's a misunderstanding. It's a confusion. The mind lacks wisdom and doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And because the mind has this lack of wisdom, it doesn't realize that craving and anger is arising because of one's own mind. In the unenlightened state, with this lack of wisdom or this unknowing of true reality, the mind firmly believes that other people are causing you to be angry. And this is why you're being bitter and harsh and hostile towards others, almost feeling justified in your anger. This is why the mind pushes people away, or you might put your expectations on people and try to control people, because the mind is misunderstanding and confused about what the real problem is. The real problem is craving and anger inside one's own mind. But as long as the mind is ignorant of this, or has this lack of wisdom or this unknowing of true reality, these misunderstandings, then the craving and anger will continue to persist in the mind. It's like the mind is stuck in this constant cycle, that because of its ignorance, the craving continues. And when the cravings are there, then the anger is going to arise too, because you can't permanently get what you want. If you can only be happy when you get what you want, when your cravings are fulfilled, then that means when your cravings aren't fulfilled, the anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, agitation is going to arise. So even though we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, and these are the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires, it's really because of ignorance. It's really because of this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom, that then craving and anger continues to persist in the mind. If it wasn't for this lack of wisdom, then craving and anger would have been eradicated. But because the mind in the unenlightened state doesn't understand what it doesn't understand, then craving and anger continues. So this is why you've been guided from the very beginning of this program. The very first things that I shared with you at the very beginning of the program, after I welcomed all of you, I always teach to not believe anything, because you need to cultivate wisdom in order to get to enlightenment. You can't believe your way to enlightenment. So 3 months ago when we started this program, I taught you about how to cultivate wisdom through learning and examining teachings, through reflecting on them to independently verify them, and then through practicing them, integrating them into your life. And this is what's going to arise the wisdom to be able to then completely eradicate craving and anger. Because without wisdom, you'll just stay stuck in this constant cycle of experiencing anger and frustration over and over and over and over and over again. So now I'm going to go into each one of these and talk about them in detail, and then I'm going to explain to you the solutions. Now remember, it's the Eightfold Path that is the core central teaching that everything plugs into, that you need to be able to practice. But these solutions that I'm going to share with you are going to be targeting these specific poisons. So craving or greed or the desire, the attachments, the wants, the expectations, and grasping and holding. This is like a never-ending thirst, an unquenchable thirst where the mind is trying to find its satisfaction and fulfillment outside of yourself. The mind feels that this thing is going to make me feel complete. The next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to make me feel complete. So the mind chases after it. Maybe it chases after more money, or maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend, or maybe a husband or a wife, or maybe kids, or maybe a new job or a new car, any number of these things. It's not the material objects or these objects that is the problem, because being enlightened, you'll have a car, perhaps, you'll have a house, perhaps, you might have a life partner, perhaps, you might have children or things like this, you'll have clothing and money and jewelry and things like this. You might have these things, but it's when the mind falsely believes that these external things are going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction that it stays stuck in its cravings. Because you might chase after money for a while, and then you chase it and chase it and chase it and chase it, and maybe you get what you want. Maybe you get that wonderful job making all kinds of money and everything like this, and maybe you're happy for a period of time. But then that happiness fades away, because you based your inner feeling on some condition that when I have this job, I will be happy. And now you chase and chase and chase. And this is why you might be happy in a job for 3 months or 6 months. But then after a certain period of time, that wears away and you feel miserable at this job. Or this is why you might chase and chase and chase a life partner or a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you really want this person in your life, and then maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, maybe that happiness starts to fade away because now the craving has burned out. And now maybe you chase something else. You chase jewelry or clothing or some other thing. It's like an unquenchable thirst. The mind constantly keeps looking for something external and thinking that this thing is going to make you feel whole or make you feel complete. And if you get what you want, you feel happy or excited. But then when you don't get what you want, you get angry or sad or frustrated or some other painful feeling. So this is what's causing the discontent feelings. And this is what we've been talking about all the way through the program up to this point. And what's targeting this and helping you to eliminate this is breathing mindfulness meditation. This is where you're focused on the breath and you're training the mind to let go, let go, let go. And you're also using generosity, the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. These two practices are training the mind to let go. Because when you have craving, desire, attachment in the mind, it will be somewhat selfish. You'll hold on to things very tightly. My money, my car, my phone, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, my wife, my children, my house, my clothes, my jewelry. It's going to be mine, 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 mine. And now when you're holding on to these things, craving for them to be permanent, when you experience impermanence, which means things are changing, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties because the mind in the unenlightened state, it doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. And this craving in the mind, it's craving permanence. It's holding on to things and wanting them to be a certain way. So this breathing mindfulness meditation that we do, it's not to eliminate your thoughts. It's to train your mind to let go of them once you've had a thought. You're actually cultivating mindfulness or awareness of mind. You're cultivating concentration, and you're training the mind to easily let go. So when you're meditating If 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation you have to let go, let go, let go, this is really good for the mind. You're not bad at meditation. You don't have to judge your meditation as being good or bad, because all meditation is beneficial. You can just understand that your mind is holding on to something, and you might have a bombardment of thoughts, or you might indulge in a thought during your meditation, and 2 or 3 minutes down the road you realize that you're indulging in this thought and you need to let it go. So if you're letting it go and letting it go and letting it go and pulling the mind back to the breath, this is really good training for your mind. Because in daily life, when you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration or guilt and shame and fear and all these other discontent feelings, your mind's holding on to something. It's wanting something to be permanent and you can't let it go. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is like taking your mind to the gym and exercising the mind so that it can become more disciplined and more controlled. It's just like a muscle. If you went to the gym and you regularly exercised it, in daily life, when your friend asks you to help them move their couch, you would be able to do that because you have the strength to do that. But if you don't exercise your mind in breathing mindfulness meditation and train it to let go, in daily life, your mind won't be able to let go. So then you'll experience these discontent feelings. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to do that. But also generosity is helping you do this as well. Generosity is the giving and the sharing of your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources, more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. That is so important that you don't have any expectation of anything in return. And you're going to need to practice generosity frequently, daily, that you're going to need to not only practice meditation daily, but generosity too. You can practice generosity really easily. Sometimes it just takes 3 seconds or 10 seconds, but you would like to be doing this frequently throughout your day. So for example, if you were going into a store and you saw somebody walking in behind you, you could actually hold the door for them. This is generosity. This is giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required. But it's important that you do it without any expectation of anything in return. Because if you're standing there holding the door, expecting somebody to say thank you, and they don't say thank you, you'll be frustrated. You'll be agitated and annoyed. Maybe you've experienced that before, where you wanted something from this person. You need to practice generosity where it's pure generosity, where you don't have any expectation of anything in return. Because if you're only doing something because you want something back, then the mind is still holding on. It still has a craving, desire, attachment. So even wanting a thank you is expecting something and wanting something. Because in this impermanent world, when you hold the door for people, some people are going to say thank you, but other people aren't. That's the impermanent nature of the world, that not everybody's going to say thank you. So if you're standing there holding the door expecting a thank you, you'll be frustrated or agitated when somebody doesn't say thank you. So when you're practicing generosity, you'd like to live open-handedly, where you don't have any expectation of what you want in return. Just know that in practicing generosity, it's enhancing the quality of your mind. So you can share your jewelry, your clothing, your money. You can share food. Here in Asia, when we eat meals, we put food in the middle of the table and then everybody shares. Where oftentimes in the Western world, we load up our plate and now this is mine, right? Almost like an animal. Like if a lion was eating a carcass, it's like my food, they're going to growl and roar when another lion comes close by. And sometimes this is what we do in the Western world is we load up our plate with a bunch of food and now this is mine, 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 mine. So you can actually make these subtle changes to your life where when you eat what we call family style. You put the food in the middle of the table and then everybody just takes a little bit, right? Maybe take 2 or 3 or 4 spoonfuls. And then this way, everybody gets a little bit of food. And then when you're ready for more food, you take 2 or 3 or 4 more spoonfuls and put it on your plate. And now you eat a little bit. This is sharing your food. And this trains your mind and then anybody around you too. So if you have children or you have a partner, this is a wonderful thing to implement into your family environment where you guys can share food readily. And you can share other things too, right? When you go out to the store and maybe you're picking up a drink for yourself, maybe like some water or a sports drink or something. Maybe you pick up something for your friends or your family, or maybe at work you're going out for a break or something and you're getting a milkshake or something at the store. Maybe you bring back something for your coworkers as well. So you can be practicing generosity regularly, and you need to do that from the middle way, like we were talking about in a previous class. Whereas if you were exorbitantly spending a lot of time, effort, energy, and resources on other people, you wouldn't have what you need for the necessities that you need. But also, if you were never sharing, the mind would be quite selfish. So you're going to need to find this middle way with your generosity, where you're regularly practicing some generosity with the people around you. And this will help your mind to let go. Because if 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times during your day, you're letting go through practicing generosity, this is really good for your mind. What you're going to notice is frequency is more important than duration. So for example, let's just say you have a charity that you give to, and let's just say you give them like $500 once a year. That's not going to be as beneficial as if you gave them like $1 a day or $5 a week or something like this, because you're having to let go more frequently. Whereas if you're just giving them 500 at one time, your mind's only having to let go once. So you'd like to practice generosity with your time, effort, energy, and resources frequently, where you're having to let go and let go and let go and let go and let go. So if you're out and about and you see a donation box, maybe put a quarter or 50 cents or $1 or £1, depending on where you live, or 1 peso, or I'm not sure where all of you guys live, but maybe 1 yen or 1 baht or 1 whatever currency it is, just something small. This trains your mind to let go. And now you can do it at 4 or 5 or 6 different places throughout your day. This will help you to let go more frequently. So this is craving, desire, attachment, the greed, the expectations, the wanting, the craving, permanence. And it's breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity that's going to train your mind to let go. And this is what's going to help you to eliminate the discontent feelings. But you still need to understand the other ones as well. So let me pause and see if you guys have any questions here. This is one that we've been talking about extensively throughout the program so far. So you may or may not have questions here. But if you do have questions, put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, we have a question from Cameron here. Is it okay to have some expectations on how someone should act in a one-on-one relationship? Or is this imposing our own craving, desire, and attachment? Yes, this is imposing your craving, desire, attachment on others. While your relationships are going to have certain things that you need in order to be healthy, when you turn that into an expectation where you want it, this is where you're going to get discontent when you don't get it, right? So for example, in a relationship, in order for it to be healthy, you need to have the politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect. This is a baseline need that needs to occur in a relationship. The politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect. That's what you need in a relationship. But when you expect it, that means when somebody isn't polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to you, you'll be frustrated and you'll be agitated because the mind's craving for everybody to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. And you can't even be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful at this point in all your relationships. So to form an expectation and crave for your mind wanting other people to be a certain way, this is just sabotaging your relationship, because it's truly only an enlightened being that can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in every single situation that they're in. So if you're in a relationship, say with a life partner, it's helpful to ensure that both of you know that a baseline need in the relationship is to have politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect. And when somebody isn't that way, understanding that that's coming from your own mind is important, because sometimes what we do is we blame each other. So if in a life partner relationship, if your life partner is blaming you for their disrespect and their impoliteness or their anger, this isn't going to lead to improvement in your relationship, because that person needs to understand that it's their own mind that is causing those discontent feelings. So if both people have the understanding and the wisdom that their own mind is causing these discontent feelings, then when someone is impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, it can be an apology instead of an argument, right? So if somebody is disrespectful to you, what I encourage you to do is just to politely walk away. And then you don't have to stay in that situation. You can just politely walk away from the conversation. Wait 3 hours, wait 5 hours, wait a couple of days. And then if you come back into the relationship and you start spending time, perhaps they might say they apologize, maybe they won't, right? So don't have the expectation that they will apologize, because then you'll be discontent from that too. But if each person retains the responsibility that they're responsible for their own feelings, then this can promote improvement in your relationships. Because anytime that there's any impolite, unkind, unfriendly, or disrespectful conduct, the other person can accept responsibility for their own conduct and then aim to do better. But if your mind is experiencing painful feelings because somebody else was impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, that's coming from your own mind. It's coming from your own craving. And that's why it's important not to expect this from somebody, but instead to just understand that's what you need in a relationship. And then both people work towards accomplishing that in your practice, because it's only an enlightened being that's going to be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful in all situations. Okay, let me check Facebook and see if we have any questions there. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there. So I'm going to move on to the next part of our conversation here, which is talking about the next poison or the next unwholesome root. If you attended the 4-part series on loving kindness meditation, you heard a little bit about this already. Because when cravings are in the mind, you'll get happy when you get your cravings fulfilled. When those expectations or wants are fulfilled, you'll get happy. But it's conditional happiness, so therefore it's actually unpleasurable. It's dissatisfying, because it's going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. It's impermanent. But when you're not getting what you want, your mind's going to get angry and frustrated and agitated and annoyed. This is where the mind becomes hostile and bitter, where the mind feels uncomfortable with its own painful feelings, and then you might lash out at other people, having enemies or causing conflicts in a situation where the mind feels hurt and it feels these painful feelings, and it's falsely attributing these painful feelings to something outside of you. And now through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, you might act unskillfully, and now you damage your relationship. What you might end up doing when you falsely understand that it's craving, desire, attachment that's in the mind, you need to be able to understand that that's what's actually causing it. But if you don't understand that it's craving, desire, attachment causing the anger, then when you falsely attribute this anger to somebody or some situation, you might push that person away, or you might push that situation away. This is called aversion, where you're pushing somebody away or you're pushing a situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't solve the problem, because it's only a matter of time before one of your cravings get triggered and you get angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed again, right? If this person or this situation was the cause of the discontentedness, if this situation or this person was causing the anger, when you push them out of your life, you'd be happy, you'd be peaceful. You would no longer experience any anger or frustration because you've solved your problem. But when you push them out of your life, you still get angry, you still get bitter, because the mind is expecting people around you to be a certain way. So pushing people away, pushing a situation away, having aversion to this uncomfortable situation doesn't actually solve the problem, because the cause of the problem is your craving inside your own mind. The other thing that you might do when this anger is arising is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive towards others. It's almost like an animal trying to fear others to do things your way, where you're like growling and roaring, showing your teeth at this other being, trying to fear them into doing things your way. And the mind's trying to get your cravings fulfilled because it misunderstands what the real problem is. Then if you're not doing that, you're perhaps maybe applying your expectations on another person, maybe trying to pressure them into doing things your way by putting your expectations on them, trying to control them. And now, when you're pushing people away, when you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile, when you're putting your expectations on people, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. The number of people that you're able to spend time with might become fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. You might have think back to your childhood. When we were children, when we were like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old playing on the playground, we could play with anybody and everybody because we weren't judging other people. We didn't have all these cravings in the mind. We didn't have all these wants about the way we wanted people to look, the way we wanted people to talk, the way we wanted people to interact with us. We didn't have all these cravings, desires, attachments that the unenlightened mind is carrying forward into life. But as you became 20 and 30 and 40 and aging, your cravings, your expectations, your wants kept growing. So your anger might have been growing. So you might have been pushing more and more and more people away from you. So you might notice that you're spending time with fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer people. So pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations on people isn't going to work because you can't train 8 billion people to do things your way. And if you continue to do this, not understanding what the real problem is, which is the cause of the problem is craving, desire, attachment, with you not understanding it, you'll just continue to experience these struggles over and over. So rather than being angry or hateful or having ill will or frustration or agitation, you can transform your mind. You can rewire it with loving kindness meditation. You can train it to be loving and kind to all beings. What loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you have active goodwill towards others. So there's a meditation that I taught a 4-part series on where I taught you how to rewire your mind. If you haven't seen that yet, it's been recorded. It's on a playlist on YouTube or on our podcast. You can find it there where I teach you loving kindness meditation because you're going to need to integrate this into your practice. After about 4 to 6 or maybe 8 weeks of doing breathing mindfulness meditation, you would like to bring in some loving kindness meditation. This essentially rewires the mind. Because right now, if you don't understand that craving, desire, attachment is causing your discontent feelings, when somebody does something you disagree with, you might go down this well-worn path of anger and bitterness and hostility. And this path is a well-worn path. You've got the bushes pushed back, you've got the grass worn out, and you know where this path leads. It leads to broken relationships and difficulties. But now what you can do with these teachings is you can rewire your mind. You can get your machete out and you can break through this new trail. You can go this other direction where instead of going down this one trail where it leads to bitterness and hostility and broken relationships, you can create this new trail. You can get out your machete and cut through the bushes and the stickers and be more loving and kind. And that's why it's challenging, because you're having to rewire your mind. You're having to understand that whatever this person is doing isn't causing your anger. The anger is being caused by your own cravings. And now, rather than be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or push them away, or put your expectations on them, you're going to need to arise loving kindness. So by gradually wearing away the anger through your loving kindness meditation each day, you're essentially rewiring the mind. And this is going to help you to now go out into the world in your daily life and practice loving kindness through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, where you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to all beings around you without any judgment of them whatsoever. Because if you can only love people and you can only spend time with people who do things your way, if you can only spend time with people who you agree with, you're only going to spend time with a very limited number of people, because there's only one person in the world that you're going to agree with 100% of the time. You know who that person is? It's you, right? You're only going to agree with yourself 100% of the time. Your life partner, your children, your parents, your siblings, your coworkers, your boss, all these people are going to make decisions differently than you would, because they've all had different experiences in life than you. So that means that they're making decisions through different information and different wisdom, different experiences. So if you can only love people who you agree with, you can only love yourself. And you might even find that challenging, because one of the things that loving kindness and meditation and loving kindness does is it helps you eliminate that negative self-talk. If you have that inner dialogue that's degrading and diminishing in your mind, where you talk down to yourself, this is because you have anger and hatred towards this being, who you are. So this meditation of loving kindness will help you to not only have loving kindness for other beings, but have loving kindness for yourself too. So you can treat yourself more lovingly, more kindly, more warmly, more gently. You can be more caring to this being, because you might have loaded up your own mind with all kinds of cravings and expectations for yourself. And you're going to need to let those go and gradually work towards goals and objectives in your life. Rather than craving and longing and yearning for things, you're going to need to learn how to gradually work towards goals, or rather than being indifferent towards things. So if you have these expectations of yourself, you're not going to be able to fulfill those permanently. It's not possible because of the universal truth of impermanence. And you might be hateful towards yourself. So this loving kindness meditation is going to rewire your mind so that now you can go out in the world and be more loving and kind. The way that I think about it is it's like filling up your gas tank. You fill up your gas tank in the morning and then you can go drive all around town. Right? Same thing as you fill up your mind with loving kindness in the morning with your loving kindness meditation, and then you go out in the world and you be loving and kind. And this is where you can transform your relationships, where you don't need to be bitter, harsh, and hostile anymore. As I was growing up, I was very bitter and harsh and hostile with my mom, and she was the same way with me. I had certain expectations of her, things that I wanted her to do. I wanted her to be a different kind of mom than what I had. But the thing is this is the mom that I had. She was functioning in the best way that she knew how. But with my expectations and wanting her to be a certain way, she couldn't be that way because that's not the wisdom that she had. That's not the way that she functioned. So when her and I got together, it was only a matter of time before fireworks went off between the two of us. So what I needed to do is I needed to rewire my mind. I needed to train my mind because for a long time, I kept wanting her to change. I thought the way this relationship was going to improve is that she needed to change because that's the ego that's in the mind. The mind thinks that you're doing everything right and everybody else is doing everything wrong, right? And it's everyone else that needs to change. But what the Buddha's teachings brings to your understanding is that it's your own mind that needs to change. So now what I ended up doing is rewiring my mind with this loving kindness. And I started to practice generosity towards my mom. And in situations in the past where she would be angry and bitter and hostile and harsh, and I would be angry, bitter, hostile, and harsh back, I chose to do something different. When she was bitter and angry and harsh, I would be loving and kind to her. There were times where we would be on the phone and we would both erupt into fireworks. But then when I started training my mind, I did something different. When she would be bitter, harsh, and hostile, I would say things like, Mom, I'm going to get off the phone now and let you think about what it is that you just said. I know that I've been bitter with you in the past and I've been resentful, but I'm choosing not to do that anymore. I'm going to get off the phone and let you think about what you said and we'll talk another time. I love you, Mom. And then we would hang up, right? Instead of me getting angry back with her, because as long as I'm putting out anger, this is just going to keep coming back to me. So as long as I was angry, she couldn't see that she was the one who was angry too. So when I transformed my mind and I was loving and kind, she could see she was the one being bitter and harsh and hostile. So I would sometimes put our relationship on pause. And I would step away for 3 months, 6 months. Sometimes I even stepped away for multiple years. And then when we would come back together, then I could be better in the relationship. And slowly but surely, she learned and she actually ended up transforming her mind as well. So that by the time she died in 2017, there was no issues in our relationship whatsoever. We had a very loving and kind relationship for many years. There was no bitter or harsh words between the two of us. So you can accomplish the same thing in your relationships. When you're understanding that craving is the cause of the problem, when you understand you have this anger in your mind and you apply loving kindness and meditation and loving kindness in your daily life, you can arise the wisdom to be able to improve in your relationships. And now with your improved conduct, you'll see that your relationships improve as well. So there might be certain relationships in your life based on this anger and bitterness that you have and the other person has that you might just choose to let go of. This is common on the path to enlightenment, that you just let go of certain relationships and you move on. And that's one of the ways to clean this up. But then there's other relationships that you're more committed to. maybe your parents, maybe your siblings, maybe your life partner, maybe your children. You're more committed to these relationships, and you're going to maybe mentally put this relationship on pause a little bit, and you're going to work on your own mind, being more loving and more kind. And that's going to be a slow transition to be able to get there. You can't just snap your fingers and do it instantly, but gradually, slowly but surely over time, you can be more loving and kind. And then by you not putting out anger and hatred, you'll see less and less anger and hatred come back to you, because your partner is going to start seeing, or your children or your parents are going to start seeing, that they're the ones who are being bitter and harsh and hostile. You're being loving and kind. But as long as you're putting out hostility, this is what's going to come back to you. So that's the second category of relationships you're committed to, and you're going to improve your mind, and now the relationships will improve slowly but surely, perhaps. Or you have this third category of relationships, which are brand new people that you're going to meet in the future. You don't even know who they are right now. You don't know their names. You haven't even met them. But in those relationships, you're only ever going to be loving and kind, because you're training your mind to be able to do that. And now in those relationships, because you're only putting out loving kindness in your relationships through your intention, speech, and actions, that's only what's coming back to you in the relationships. So this is how you transform your relationships, is you're going to let go of some, perhaps. You're going to be committed to others, and you're going to work on your mind and improve your mind, and now you'll be better in those relationships. And then there's this third category of brand new people that you haven't even met yet, that you'll only ever be loving and kind to. So by the time you ultimately get to enlightenment, none of your relationships are problematic, that you don't have any arguments, you don't have any bitterness or hostility. You can get to a point where nobody's ever arguing with you, because you're not arguing with them. Because when someone argues with you, if you argue back with them, the argument is just going to keep going and going and going. It's like one person is picking up a rubber ball and throwing it, giving it the energy of anger, and you're picking up the rubber ball and you're throwing it around. And then they're picking up and they're throwing it around. Next thing you know, you got these rubber balls bouncing all around the room. But when somebody picks up the rubber ball of anger and throws it around the room, you don't have to pick it up. You can just let it lose its energy, let it roll to the corner. And that's you choosing to walk away. This is you responding in the situation, rather than reacting with bitterness and hostility, where you haven't thought through your decisions and you're making unwise decisions that are leading to unwholesome results. Rather than reacting unskillfully, you can learn and transform your mind to respond to the situation wisely, with wise decision making, with well thought out mental discipline, with moral conduct, and with wisdom. This is the Eightfold Path that I've taught you earlier, where you learn about right intention, right speech, and right action. So it's the loving kindness meditation that's going to gradually wear away this bitterness and hostility. And each day when you're practicing loving kindness meditation, you're not going to know how much of the anger you've worn away. It's kind of like a digging tool. If you were digging with a tool that had a wooden handle, each day you're wearing away the wood on the handle, and you're not going to know how much wood you've worn away from this digging tool. You might use it for multiple years, and you're gradually wearing away the wood on this wooden handle. You're not going to know how much wood you wore away each day. But when the handle's completely exhausted and you need to replace it, you're going to know that it's time to replace it. But each day, you're not going to know how much wood is worn away from this handle. It's the same thing that when you're wearing away this anger and bitterness and hostility, you need to have confidence in these teachings and in the Buddha, and dedicate yourself, be committed and determined and diligent to practicing each and every single day through your meditations, through your moral conduct, through your generosity and all these things. And gradually, slowly but surely, you're wearing away the bitterness and the hostility. Each day, you're not going to know how much of it you've worn away. But when it's completely gone, you're going to know that, because it'll be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't been bitter and harsh and hostile in that relationship at all. And you'll know that it's gone. This is how I knew that I wore away my anger towards my mom, because we got to a point where there was no bitterness or hostility between me to her, and then ultimately between her to me. It just didn't exist, right? And then you do this in each one of your relationships. So you can wear away this anger and hatred. You don't have to carry it around. And it's not being caused by other people. It's from within your own mind. So the loving kindness meditation is like a jackhammering this anger away and breaking it up and getting rid of it. But then you can't just meditate your way to this love and this kindness, you need to go out into the world through your intentions, your speech, and your actions and practice being loving and kind. So let me see what questions you guys have here. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So I'm going to move to the next poison or the next unwholesome root, which is ignorance or delusion, or this unknowing of true reality, this confusion, this misunderstanding. This is the mind lacking wisdom, where it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It has these misperceptions of the way that the world truly works. It doesn't understand these natural laws of existence. It has this inability to understand things as they truly are. There's these distortions in the mind, this confusion that is hindering the mind from being able to see true reality. And that's what a Buddha does, is a Buddha figures this out by themselves, and then they share it with other people that can then be independently verified, so that then you can awaken to the wisdom of these teachings. Because as long as you lack wisdom of craving and anger, as long as there's this ignorance of craving and anger, as long as there's this misunderstanding and this confusion of craving and anger, and that's the real problem that's inside your own mind, you'll continue to stay stuck, because you'll continue to have a lack of wisdom, thinking that other people are causing you to be sad or frustrated or angry or irritated, and now you just stay stuck, because you'll just keep blaming other people for what it is that you're experiencing. And you'll keep pushing people away. You'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, and you'll put your expectations on people. And the number of people you can spend time with becomes fewer and fewer and fewer. So it's arising wisdom through investigating the teachings, learning them, reflecting on them to independently verify them and practice them, that helps you to acquire wisdom. And now, instead of having belief in the mind, through independently verifying the teachings with guidance from a teacher, you can see the truth. You can cultivate and acquire wisdom in the mind to be able to independently verify that it's craving and anger that's causing these discontent feelings. And now with that wisdom, you can build all your teachings up in your mind to develop this life practice, where you're learning the three universal truths, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the five precepts, the Brahma Viharas, the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, the seven factors of enlightenment, extensive meditation training, and eliminating the 10 fetters. These are the core central teachings that you're going to need to know. And all of these are shared in this group learning program. And then you can deepen your understanding of this through the various classes, courses, and retreats that I have, the various books and audiobooks and podcasts and YouTube videos and things like this. And that's why you need to not believe the teachings. You can't believe your way to a better life. You can't believe your way to a better afterlife, right? What you would like to be able to do is learn and practice now in this life, so that now in this life you can see improvement to the condition of your mind. And it's wisdom that's going to help you to do this. That's why the Buddha never taught rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship, because these things don't lead to wisdom. You need to gain the wisdom of these natural laws so that now you can navigate the world more readily. Because when you live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties. That anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings, that's the mind struggling in a world. That's the mind having difficulties in the world, because the mind's living in a world that it doesn't understand. How many times have you watched the news, or how many times have you heard about some situation in your family, and you might have said, I just don't understand those people. I don't understand why they keep doing that, right? The reason why the mind doesn't understand is because of this lack of wisdom, this unknowing of true reality. What's happening in the world around you when you see all these unwholesome things that are happening, whether it's on a personal level, a neighborhood level, a global level, your entire country, when you're seeing difficulties and struggles in the world, it's because human beings are making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. They lack wisdom of these natural laws. And when your mind is saying, I just don't understand what they're doing, that's because you don't understand that their mind is affected with these poisons. Their mind is having craving, anger, and ignorance, and because they're making unwise decisions, it's producing unwholesome results. So in order to fully awaken, in order to fully get to this peace and joy where your mind is unaffected by what's going on around you, then you'll need to understand what craving, anger, and ignorance is, understand the solutions, and then implement those solutions. And the way that you do that is through acquiring wisdom. You learn, you investigate, you examine. That's what you're doing in these classes. And if you're reading the book, either before or after class, that's what you're doing. You're investigating the teachings. But then you need to reflect on them to independently verify that they're true. And then where you have trouble with that, you ask me questions and I will help you. And then you need to practice the teachings where you're integrating the meditations into your daily life. You're integrating the generosity into your daily life. You're integrating all those factors of the Eightfold Path, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and all the others. That when you're integrating these into your life, now you're making wiser and wiser decisions, and you'll experience more and more wholesome results coming back to you because you've arisen wisdom. So this is the exact opposite of what is plaguing the mind, which is this ignorance. So while we say it's craving, anger, and ignorance, the true reality of it is that because of ignorance, craving and anger continues to exist. So by arising wisdom, you can dismantle the craving and anger. But without the wisdom, you can't dismantle craving and anger. You don't even realize that that perhaps is the problem in the mind and the cause of the problem. So arising wisdom is so key. So I'm going to give you a little summary of what we talked about today, and then I'll just open up to any and all questions that you have about what I've been sharing. We've been discussing the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires. And this is described as craving, anger, and ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality. Some people describe it as greed, hatred, and delusion, or desire, ill will, and confusion. And then there's antidotes or remedies or solutions to this. We refer to them as the three wholesome roots. These are generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. These are the exact opposites of craving, anger, and ignorance, because craving is the selfishness, the unquenchable thirst of chasing things and wanting things and holding on to them. Generosity is just the opposite. It's training your mind to be open-handed and let go. And then, of course, you've got breathing mindfulness meditation there too. Well, the anger, the hostility, and the bitterness, the exact opposite of that is loving kindness, where you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you have active goodwill. And you need the loving kindness meditation and practicing through your intention, speech, and actions in daily life to be able to then experience the eradication of anger, because now you're being loving and kind to the people around you. And then this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality, this confusion and misunderstanding that the mind has, the way you remedy that is through wisdom, through not believing the teachings, but through learning, reflecting to independently verify and practice. So now by eliminating and eradicating the three unwholesome roots and now making decisions through the three wholesome roots, you'll eliminate 100% of the discontentedness and all the suffering that it causes. You'll eliminate all your unwholesome karma production. All the unwholesome results that you're experiencing will be eradicated. And you'll slowly but surely be able to do that. And I'm going to teach you how to do that next week in our class. So the mind will ultimately become enlightened because you've completely cleaned up the mind. You've purified the mind of all craving, anger, and ignorance. And there's no more decisions that are being made through craving, anger, and ignorance. It's only being made through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So this is the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires, and they need to be eradicated from the mind in order to experience the purity and the peacefulness of the enlightened mind. So we have some questions coming in here. We have one from Maria. If I take responsibility and accountability for my discontentedness and anger, how can I also prevent other people taking advantage of that and using me as a scapegoat to avoid taking responsibility themselves? Thank you. So you shouldn't have any expectation that other people will take responsibility for their own anger. If they're not taking responsibility for their anger, they're just going to continue to stay angry. So rather than try to expect or require other people to do the same thing you're doing, just focus on your own mind and make sure that you look at what you've done in any given situation that led to any particular situation. Let's just say in a situation with maybe like a coworker that something happened and something erupted into a big problem. And let's just say 99% of it is from them in their side, right? That's for them to figure out. Unless they come to you and ask for help. Figure out your 1%. Figure out that 1% of whatever you did to contribute to that situation, arise wisdom, and improve next time. And where you need help, you can reach out to me and I'll help you with that. Because if you focus on their 99%, you don't get wisdom for yourself of how to improve. That's for them to figure out. And if they're not willing to look at that and they're not willing to figure that out, then they're just going to keep having problem after problem after problem after problem. But spend the time, effort, energy, and resources to figure out your 1%. And now you have somebody that's in your corner, a teacher who understands the natural law of Gotama really well, that I can help you to be able to investigate that 1% and figure out what wisdom can you cultivate. Because between now and enlightenment, you're going to make plenty of mistakes. You're going to have plenty of missteps. And when you have those missteps, if you turn away from them and run away from them, you're just going to ensure that they continue over and over and over again. So instead, you turn around and you walk towards those struggles. You walk towards those difficulties. You investigate and penetrate into those areas that you're lacking wisdom on, and you cultivate wisdom. So now when you're confronted with that same situation, you'll have improved wisdom of how to deal with it. So that's where you can ask me questions in class. You can get really specific if you like. You can post in the Facebook group. You can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance, and I will help you and listen to what it is that you're encountering, and I will show you the things that you need to do in order to improve. We can talk about other people every once in a while to be able to help you cultivate wisdom, not in a gossip or slanderous way, but as a way to help you to cultivate wisdom. But more importantly, focus on what you did in order to contribute to that situation and that anger. If somebody else is blaming you for their anger, let them blame you. That's up to them to figure out. You can walk away from that situation. You can even walk away from the entire relationship if you need to. So while we talk about aversion, what aversion is when you're pushing the situation away or you're pushing the relationship away because you're having painful feelings and you're thinking that this is going to solve the problem by pushing this person away. So that is aversion, right? Because the mind in this situation has wrong view. It thinks that the problem is this person, and if I push this person away, that's going to solve the problem. But from the outside looking in, the same thing can occur where you choose to move on from a relationship, but you retain right view, where you understand any painful feelings you're experiencing in this situation, it's coming from your own mind, it's coming from your own cravings. So now you might still choose to move on out of a relationship, but you're not pushing them aside thinking that that's going to solve the problem. You retain the understanding that it's your own cravings, desires, attachments that's causing these discontent feelings. So other people most likely aren't going to accept responsibility for their own anger because they haven't studied the Four Noble Truths. But you don't need them to. You're not requiring them to. You're not expecting them to, because you're not interested in basing your inner feelings on what they choose to do or what they choose not to do, but just retain right view for yourself that any anger you're experiencing is coming from your own mind. And if you need to apologize to them, you can apologize to them for any bitterness and hostility that you exhibited. If they choose not to apologize, then that's their choice. So your practice is based on what you know to be wise. I'll give you a little story here that illustrates this. In the past, when I was living in America and I used to come to Thailand, I would be here sometimes for 1 month, and I would be training my mind and kind of like spending time around different people, and I would be very cheerful, and I would be quite a bit smiling and cheerful and joyful. And I would go back to America, and when I would go to work, the elevator would open, I would step into the elevator, there'd be somebody there, maybe a woman or a man, and I would look to them and I would smile, and I might even say good morning. And then they would just kind of scowl, they were kind of afraid, right? Because maybe they've been taught that strangers are bad, right? And slowly but surely, when this would happen, my joy would go away, because I was so used to being in Thailand and people being cheerful and bright and radiant that when I would say, hello, good morning, and I would smile, they would smile back and say good morning. But then when I went to America, people weren't doing that. So I started changing my practice based on what I was experiencing. But then I realized that that was unwise. I shouldn't change what I'm doing based on what other people are doing around me. So if you know that it's wise to accept responsibility for your own anger, keep with that. That's wise. If other people choose not to, then that's what they choose to do. Same thing as if you know it's wise to smile at people and say good morning, then smile at people and say good morning. If they choose to not smile and say good morning back, so be it. If you're smiling and saying good morning, it should be without any expectation of anything in return. Where if they smile back and say good morning, great, wonderful. If they don't, then that's fine too. Maintain your joy. Keep your mind uplifted and bright, regardless of what's going on around you. So hopefully that story will help you a little bit. Okay, it looks like we have a question here from Julia on Zoom as well. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, Teacher David. I am an introvert and I get energy from being alone at times. It is not turning people away, but just that sometimes I find certain interactions to be draining. Is it okay to ask for time away to decompress, or is that part of the craving also? Thank you. If you need time away, you can choose to do that, right? If you need to ask, like I think in your situation, you have young children, so you might have to ask your partner, like, hey, do you mind taking care of the children so I can go spend a few hours on my own? Yeah, if you need to ask, go for that, right? But if there's a situation where it's maybe just you and your partner, don't feel like you have to ask them permission to go spend time alone, right? If you just go spend time alone, if they get frustrated and irritated about that, that's their own craving. So you can go spend time alone, but be sure you spend time with other people too. The reason why you're getting drained in situations where you're around other people is because you have a craving for them to be a certain way. And when they're that way, you're happy. But when they're not that way, you feel exhausted. You feel these painful feelings coming in, and the mind gets exhausted. You feel like you're probably carrying this burden on your shoulders. You might feel this heavy burden on your shoulders and your neck and your feet, because these cravings, carrying them around and wanting people to be a certain way, it can be exhausting to have these. So the more that your mind becomes liberated, you'll find that you'll be just as energetic when you're alone as with other people. So while you say, I am an introvert, I encourage you to let go of that. Don't identify with that, because that's just the personal existence view that the mind is holding on to, which we've talked about in other classes. Don't train your mind to think that I am an introvert, because that's just assuming an identity and thinking that you can't be peaceful and joyful around other people, that you have to be alone, and that's the only time you can be peaceful and joyful. You'd like to dispel that from the mind and realize that what's causing the lack of peacefulness and harmony when you're around other people is your own cravings, desires, attachments. When you get rid of that, you'll have very fulfilling and satisfying relationships, and you can be around other people. Because at one time I would have considered myself an introvert as well, and I still enjoy spending time alone, but I also enjoy spending time with other people too, which I didn't in the past. So when you eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, you'll still enjoy spending time alone, which is great, because some people don't enjoy that. But you also need to train your mind to feel comfortable being with other people. But in the process of doing that, if you need to step away and be alone for a bit, then do that. That's better than being around people and being bitter, harsh, and hostile. If you don't think that you have control or discipline of your mind where you're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile or unskillful, it's better to go be alone. Because whenever you're putting out bitterness and hostility through your intention, speech, and actions, it's all going to come back to you. So it's better to be alone in those situations and only be around people when it's the proper time and you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. We have a question coming in from Brent on Zoom. I usually do a loving kindness meditation in the morning and a breathing mindfulness meditation in the afternoon. Is it better to keep these as separate 30-minute meditations, or should I do 2 meditations that is a combo of both? So if you do loving kindness meditation the way I taught, and you're doing that in the morning, you should be doing a little bit of breathing mindfulness meditation with it. Maybe just like 5 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that at the beginning, and maybe a little bit at the end too. So that's plenty there, because doing loving kindness meditation in the morning is ideal, because you go out into the world being more loving and kind. It doesn't mean you can't do it in the middle of the day or you can't do it in the evening, because you surely can, especially if you're dealing with a lot of anger. You could do it 3 times a day if you'd like. But if you do it in the morning like you're doing, Brent, that's really helpful, because you go out into your day being loving and kind. And then if you would like to do your breathing mindfulness meditation in the middle of the day or in the evening, like it is that you say that you're doing, yeah, that's a standalone meditation by itself as well. So you can do it exactly the way you're describing, and that would be just fine. But just remember, don't stay tied to that. So in some situations, you might mix it up a little bit and kind of see and ensure that the mind is not craving or attached to it being in one particular way, because the mind can even get attached to meditation, right? I noticed that I was attached to meditating in a particular location. So I had to start moving my mind around, going from different temples and different parks and different locations in my house. You need to move your mind around a bit sometimes as you need to challenge it. When you're first getting started with your meditation practice, you don't really challenge it that much. You're just kind of getting established. But then you like to kind of mix it up a little bit too. So feel free to mix that up occasionally if that's what you're doing consistently, is move it around and shift it around every once in a while to ensure the mind's not craving or attached to your meditation being any one particular way. Okay, we have another question here from Julie, or perhaps it's a comment. Thank you. Yes, it is specific people who drain me because of my craving. I will take some time apart until I can foster more loving kindness. That's good that you're seeing it to that level of detail, Julia, but just be sure you understand that it's not other people draining you. It's your craving, your anger, and your ignorance that's doing that. And now when you're around certain people, they're doing things that you don't want them to do. You have certain expectations and wants of things you want them to do, and then they don't do it your way. And this is where the mind gets dragged down. So it's the craving, anger, and ignorance that's dragging them down. Because if I was around those people, I wouldn't get dragged down. I wouldn't feel drained because I don't have an expectation that they should be a particular way. But I understand your mind is like that right now. But just be sure you keep with right view, and that you understand that it's not other people that's causing this in your mind, but it's the craving, anger, and ignorance that's causing it. Because that'll help you maintain right view. And then you understand that the real issue is that you need to apply the training to the mind to uproot this and get it out of the mind. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. Okay, I just see some things on YouTube. You're welcome. Pleased to help you. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. I think it's Mimi. I'm not sure. You're welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay. So I'm not seeing any other questions coming in anywhere. So I just like to thank all of you for joining for today's conversation and our discussion on the three poisons, these three unwholesome roots, and these three fires. This is where you can, like I said, broaden your understanding of what's going on in the unenlightened mind and deepen it as well, and understand how I've been giving you the solutions all the way through. This is where it kind of all comes together and you see, oh my goodness, David has put this program together in a certain way so that I've been guiding you towards the elimination of these three poisons for the last 3 months. And now you're understanding why the program was structured the way that it is. And now what we're going to be doing in the future classes is now I'm going to teach you next week about the natural law of Gotama. I've really been teaching it to you all the way through, but now we're going to go in and talk about it in detail. And I'm going to help you to understand how these three poisons are motivating unskillful conduct and how you can transform this out of the mind. And then on Wednesday, from now forward, I've finished the 4-part series on breathing mindfulness meditation, the 4-part series on loving kindness meditation, and the 4-part series on Buddhist chanting. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be rotating. Every other Wednesday, I'm going to be doing breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. I'm going to be switching back and forth each Wednesday, and I'm just going to open up to any and all questions you have. So if you have random questions or you need help, you can always come to class on Wednesday, and you can even listen to the replay to do the meditations and hear the questions that other students have, where you can get help on any Wednesday. And of course, all those other ways too, where any class you can ask questions in, you can post in the Facebook group, you can send me a private message or schedule personal guidance. So you're welcome to come to any and all of these learning opportunities. And then next week on Monday, I'm going to be starting a course here at the temple. It's called Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. This is a course that I teach twice a year. It's only taught 2 times per year. And it's going to help you to understand the jhanas, which are these preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. And it's going to help you to understand the 4 stages of enlightenment. So this is going to be taught Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So you would need to look at your time zone because depending on where you are, that might be Sunday evening that it starts. So you can watch this live if you like, or you can watch the recordings if you like, because it's going to be recorded for YouTube and it's going to be on our Facebook as well. So thank you all for joining for our class today, and perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee khap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.